He said, "We'll meet you at the station, Mum. Don't worry." So I dressed nice. Not fancy, but nice. A lavender blouse I hadn't worn since Paul's funeral, soft slacks that didn't wrinkle too much on the train, and the coat I saved for holidays. I held the lemon cake in both hands the whole ride. His favourite, my grandson, always said my cakes were better than store kind. I didn't mind the long ride, not at all. I was excited, nervous even. It had been a while since I felt like someone was waiting for me. The station was small, just 2 platforms and a vending machine with half its lights flickering. I stepped off, scanning faces. No one looked familiar. I waited by the benches, then moved to the curb where cars looped in and out. I even waved at a silver sedan I thought might be theirs, but it passed. Then, at 4:47, I saw them. I'd know that car anywhere. The blue Honda with the dent on the left side. My son was driving. His wife was beside him, sunglasses on, scrolling her phone. In the back, a silhouette, my grandson, head down, probably on a tablet. They slowed as they neared the entrance. My heart lifted. I shifted the cake in my arms, raised my hand, smiled. But they didn't stop. They didn't even slow down enough for me to doubt it. They drove past. I stood there, my hand frozen mid-air, the smile stuck to my face like wet laundry in the cold. My eyes followed the car until it disappeared behind the turn. I waited 5 more minutes. Maybe they missed me. Maybe they'd circle back. 10 more minutes passed. The cake was getting heavy. My shoulders started to ache. They didn't come back. A young man in a hoodie offered to help me find a taxi. I shook my head, said I'd manage, and I did. I walked to the payphone, called the same cab company that had brought me here years ago when they first asked me to move in. The woman on the line remembered my name, said she'd send someone right away. The ride back was quiet. I stared out the window the whole way, the cake untouched on my lap. The city looked the same, but felt different. The houses blurred past. Brick, vinyl siding, picket fences. They all looked like someone else's life now. I don't remember when I stopped feeling at home here. When we pulled up to their house, the house, I didn't ask the driver to wait. I let myself in with my key. No one was downstairs, just the soft hum of the dishwasher and a faint lemony scent from the counter spray. I left the cake on the kitchen table. I went upstairs, changed out of the blouse, hung the coat neatly in the closet. Then I sat at the edge of the bed, the one they call guest bed, though I've slept in it every night for 6 years. I folded my hands in my lap and looked at the door. I listened for their voices. Laughter, footsteps, anything. Nothing came. At 7:12 I heard the garage. They were home. I didn't move. I heard shoes on tile, the fridge door open, the faint clink of ice. No voices. Then the soft patter of feet. My grandson, probably. A knock on my door? No. Just more silence. Later, I heard her voice, the daughter-in-law, floating up the stairs. "She made cake again," she said. "I mean, it's nice, but we're watching Sugar." Then his voice, flat. "I forgot to text her. I thought you did." A pause. "Well, she's home now, right?" That was it. That was the whole conversation about me. I sat there for a long time. Hours, maybe. I didn't cry. I've cried before. When Paul died. When they packed away my wedding china without asking. When they threw out my plants because they cluttered the patio. But tonight, I didn't cry. Tonight, something else settled in. Not sadness, not even anger. Just something still. Cold and still. Like a lake after the last ripple fades. I realized, sitting there in that room with the beige walls and the lamp that buzzed if you turned it too high, I didn't belong here. Not anymore. Maybe I never really had. They forgot me at the station. They drove past their own mother like she was scenery. But I remembered something they didn't. Whose name was on the deed. Whose money helped buy their first car. Who changed her entire life to be closer. I didn't speak to them that night. I listened. To their casual chatter downstairs. To the television humming something forgettable. To the sound of the ice dispenser clicking like a broken metronome. I waited for a knock, a quiet apology, even a glance in my direction. None came. In the morning, I brewed coffee. Quietly, the way I always did. I used the smaller pot, the one they never touched. I didn't want to make a sound, not out of fear, just habit. That's what I had become in this house, a silent habit. She walked in first, the daughter-in-law. Danielle, always perfectly polished, even in leggings. She glanced at the cake on the counter, then at me. "Oh, you're up early," she said, like I was a toddler breaking the routine. "Sorry about yesterday. Traffic was awful." I didn't answer. She didn't wait for one. She poured almond milk into her smoothie cup, then added kale, protein powder, and 3 frozen bananas, all without once asking if I needed anything. I stood by the sink, hands wrapped around my mug like it was the only warm thing left in the room. My son, Mark, came down next. He kissed her on the cheek, scratched at his stubble, and muttered a hello to me without looking up from his phone. "You got home okay?" he asked, like he'd read it off a checklist. "Yes," I said. "That's good. Sorry we missed you. Miscommunication or something." Then he turned to Danielle and asked if they had time to swing by Home Depot after work. Just like that, as if I'd never stood waiting with a cake in my hands and a suitcase by my side. They left by 8. I heard the garage door creak open, then roll closed again, sealing me back into silence. That afternoon, I cleaned. Not because I had to, but because that's what I did. That's what made me feel like I still had purpose in these walls. I dusted the baseboards, sorted the recycling, folded a basket of clean towels that no one remembered to carry upstairs. I did it all without thanks, as always. Around 3, I wandered out to the backyard. The sun was sharp, but not cruel. I bent down to check the rosemary I'd planted 2 springs ago. It was still growing, despite being pushed into a forgotten corner near the AC unit. I pinched a sprig and breathed it in. For a moment, it smelled like a kitchen in another life, a life where I was still seen. Then I noticed the garden beds, or what was left of them. My pots, terracotta ones I had hauled with me from my old home, were gone. The raised bed I had built with Mark on a summer weekend had been flattened, replaced with gravel and 2 grey lawn chairs. I walked back inside, heart tight. That evening, I asked about it. Gently. "Oh, the pots?" Danielle said. "Yeah, we decluttered the patio. It was just getting a little busy out there." "They were mine," I said softly. "We thought you wouldn't mind. You haven't really been out there lately." Mark didn't say anything. He just kept eating. Chicken, rice, a side of roasted carrots I'd made. The only thing I cooked that week. It wasn't the first time something of mine disappeared. My ceramic teapot had been replaced with a sleek electric kettle. My needlepoint frame vanished from the living room after she said it looked too old-fashioned. My bedroom clock, the one Paul had given me, replaced with a digital one that beeped every hour on the hour, even when I asked them to turn it off. Bit by bit, I'd been erased. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of noise. The house was silent. Too silent. It was the kind of stillness that doesn't comfort, only tightens. I lay on the twin bed in my small room, staring at the ceiling. I counted the turns of the ceiling fan. I thought about the train station, about how Mark hadn't even looked out the window when they passed me, about how Danielle said, "We thought you wouldn't mind," when they took my garden. I had minded. I had minded every time. I just hadn't said it. That was my fault, I suppose. I had made it easy for them, made myself small, foldable, easy to move around, easy to forget. But the thing about being forgotten is that it gives you space, quiet, time to remember things even they don't know you remember. Like where I kept the deed to the house back in Oakhurst, or how I never changed the title, or that legally, the home they lived in now, this one, wasn't in either of their names. It was still mine. My name, in full, stamped on every official page, every tax record, every utility account. They had simply stopped noticing, and I had let them, until now. The next morning, I pulled the old tin box from the back of my closet. It was wrapped in a faded dish towel, the kind with little strawberries on the hem. I unfolded it gently, careful not to tear the corners. Inside were the documents I hadn't looked at in years, not because I forgot, but because I thought I'd never need them again. Marriage certificate, death certificate, the deed to the house in Oakhurst, property tax receipts, all paid. My name, Nora Jean Thomason. No cosigner, no et al., just me. It was a quiet comfort, seeing the proof, not for spite, just for grounding, like holding a mirror up to yourself after too long. I sat on the edge of the bed and reread every page, line by line. My eyes weren't what they used to be, so I used the magnifying glass Mark had given me once as a joke. "So, you can keep reading those long grocery receipts?" he'd said. That same glass now helped me read the document that proved I wasn't as invisible as they believed. That afternoon, I made a phone call. I didn't tell anyone. I just dialed the number scratched in pencil on the back of an old church bulletin. It rang twice. "Walter's law office," came the familiar voice. "Walter, it's Nora Jean?" A pause, then warmth. "Well, I'll be damned. Haven't heard your voice in a decade. I need to see you." There was no question in his voice. "Tomorrow morning," he said. 10 sharp. The next day, I took the bus across town. The folder was in my tote bag, zipped tight, resting against the same notebook where I used to write down Paul's blood pressure readings. Old habits, I suppose. I arrived early. I always do. Walter looked the same, just more sloped. His office smelled of lemon oil and old paper. When I walked in, he pushed aside his reading glasses and smiled without asking why I'd come. I placed the folder on his desk, opened to the deed. "I want to know what my options are," I said, quietly. He flipped through the papers with the careful hands of someone used to delivering bad news gently, but when he looked up, his face was unreadable. "It's clean," he said. "You never sold, never transferred, never gave anyone durable power. This house is yours, Nora. Has been since 1992. I nodded. "And if I wanted to sell it?" "Doable," he said. "Very. It'd just require your signature and a decent realtor. We can draw up the protections so no one can dispute it." "I don't want them to know." His eyes met mine. "Until it's done." I nodded. We talked for another hour. Not about revenge, not about teaching anyone a lesson, just logistics, dignity, written in paragraphs. He made copies, gave me a checklist, told me to take my time. But I didn't want time. I wanted clarity. When I got home that evening, the house was empty. Danielle was out with friends. Mark had texted that he was working late. I stood in the kitchen and stared at the lemon cake, still untouched on the counter from days ago. The foil was dented now, the icing a little cracked. I threw it away. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt clean. That night, I lay awake in bed and thought about the garden in Oakhurst. about the creaking porch Paul fixed with borrowed nails, about the smell of cedar in the hallway. I thought about the curtains I'd sewn by hand, the kitchen I painted twice, the door I scrubbed each spring. They called it your old place now, like it was some motel I once visited. But it wasn't old. It was mine. And I had kept every receipt, every page, every right. Quietly, respectfully. But now I was done waiting for respect in return. I reached under my bed, pulled out the same suitcase I'd once used to move in. I dusted off the handle and zipped it open. Then I made a list, not of what I'd take, of what I'd no longer carry. I didn't pack right away. That wasn't the kind of list I meant. No shirts, no toothbrush, no slippers wrapped in plastic bags. I wasn't planning a trip. I was planning a release. I sat at my little desk, the one they let me keep because it fit the room, and pulled out an envelope. I wrote the date in the corner, then started my list. It began with things I wouldn't miss. Asking for permission to have a guest. Hiding my knitting because it makes the room look messy. Being called she instead of mom at dinner. Cooking meals they criticized. Being blamed for things I didn't do, like the thermostat or the strange smell. Watching my grandson learn silence from his father. Waiting to feel welcome. The pen didn't shake. That surprised me. My hands usually tremble in the morning, but now they were steady, certain. When I finished, I folded the page neatly and slipped it into the notebook where I'd once kept birthdays and grocery coupons. Let it live there, among the memories. The next day, I called Jessica Tran. She was the daughter of a woman I used to work with at the library back in Oakhurst. As a teenager, Jessica came by after school and helped me reshelve returned books. Now she was a realtor, sharp, discreet, kind. I remembered her smile before I remembered her title. "Miss Thomason?" she said when I called. "Of course I remember you." "I need help with a private sale," I told her. "The house in Oakhurst. I still own it." I expected questions. She didn't ask any. "I can meet you there Thursday morning," she said. "You don't have to go inside if you're not ready." We met in the driveway. The paint had faded, the shutters were missing a few slats, and the mailbox leaned a little to the left. But the bones, Paul used to say that, "It's got good bones," were strong. Jessica walked the perimeter while I waited in the car. She took pictures, made notes, squatted down to inspect the steps. When she returned, she had a clipboard and a pen. "The market's moving," she said. "If we list fast and clean, you'll have offers within the week." "No open houses," I said. "No signs. Just quiet showings to serious buyers." She nodded. Understood. I signed the form. My name, full and unshaken. Nora John Thomason, owner. That night, I returned to the house in silence. Danielle was upstairs, on her nightly phone call with her sister. I could hear the sharp lilt of judgment in every laugh. Mark was in the den, watching something loud, pretending not to hear. I sat at the kitchen table, same as always. Only this time I wasn't trying to be invisible. I was preparing to disappear on my own terms. The next day, Jessica called with 3 buyers. One of them, a retired teacher, had cash in hand and a soft voice that reminded me of autumn. I chose her, not for the money, for the way she asked about the garden. The sale moved quickly. By Monday, the papers were ready. By Wednesday, they were signed. By Thursday, the house, the one I was never allowed to call mine in front of Danielle, was officially no longer part of my past. But more importantly, it was no longer theirs. They didn't know yet. That was coming. And when it did, I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd just hand them the truth. It arrived on a Tuesday. The envelope was thick, cream-coloured, the kind that doesn't crumple easily. Certified mail, signed upon receipt. Danielle was the one who answered the door. I watched from the hallway as she took the package, flipped it over, then called out, "Mark, something legal came. For your mum, I think." He was halfway up the stairs, work shoes still on. "What kind of legal?" She peeled it open right there, without asking. That told me everything I needed to know. She held the pages up, scanned the first few lines, and her smile dropped like a curtain. She turned slowly toward me, still standing in the hallway in my sweater and slippers. "You sold it," she said. I didn't blink. "Yes." Her voice rose, sharp around the edges. "You sold the house?" Mark came closer now, holding the pages, flipping through. Wait. This says the Oakhurst property." I nodded once. "You didn't tell us," Danielle said. "You didn't even talk to us about it." "You didn't ask," I said. It wasn't anger in my voice, just fact. The same tone they used every time they accidentally threw out something I cared about. Mark ran a hand through his hair. "Mum, we could have used that. We had plans. We were going to refinance, maybe help with college. You thought it was yours," I interrupted. Neither of them said a word. "You thought I forgot," I said quietly. "That because I didn't say anything, I'd given it up. But silence doesn't mean surrender. It just means I was watching." Danielle scoffed. "So what now? You pocket the money and leave?" I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of her disapproval. "I'm not leaving yet," I said. "But I won't be staying for long." I walked past them both, back to my room. I closed the door gently, not like a slam, but like a drawer that's finally been emptied. That evening, I got another call from Jessica. "Funds cleared," she said, "and your share has been deposited. You should see the amount by morning." I didn't ask how much. I already knew it was enough. The next day, Mark avoided me. Danielle didn't. She hovered, made sharp remarks about consulting family and being considerate. I didn't answer. I had other things to do. I booked a small apartment downtown, month to month. Quiet building, older residents, a little balcony that caught the morning light. I didn't tell anyone, just packed slowly, piece by piece, like someone removing bricks from a wall that once enclosed her. I gave my notice the following week. They didn't react well. "You're just going to leave?" Mark asked. "After everything?" "After everything," I said calmly. "I think I've earned the right." Danielle didn't speak to me at all that night. She moved around the kitchen with brittle hands, opening and slamming drawers. I washed my mug and dried it slowly. There was no farewell dinner, no hugs, no packed lunch for the road. But there was peace. And sometimes, that's all a woman needs to know she made the right choice. The apartment was small. 2 rooms, a kitchenette, a narrow balcony with rusted rails and chipped paint. But it had morning light, real, generous light that spilled through the windows like it knew me. I moved in on a Friday. No help, no fuss. The moving man looked at my few boxes and asked, "That's all?" I nodded. "I've already let go of the rest." He didn't ask more, just tipped his cap and left. Inside, I unpacked slowly. The first thing I set out was Paul's photograph, the one from our 30th anniversary. He wore a sweater I'd knitted, awkward in front of the camera, smiling like someone who had just remembered the punchline of a private joke. I placed it on the windowsill, just above the potted mint I'd brought from Danielle's trash pile. She'd called it leggy and tossed it in the compost. I saved it. That felt fitting. I made tea. Real tea. Not the herbal bags Danielle stocked for bloating and immunity. Just plain black, the way I liked it. I sat by the window, steaming mug in hand, and listened to the city below. Sirens in the distance. Someone laughing on the street. Life, rough-edged and honest. It was the first cup of tea I'd had in years that didn't come with a side of apology. That night, I slept soundly. No buzzing lights, no voices behind walls, just the hum of the fridge and my own breathing. The next morning, I opened every window and let the air in. It didn't matter that it smelled faintly of asphalt and exhaust. It was mine. It was honest. By noon, I had a plan. I called Walter. "I need help writing something," I said. "Not legal, just true." He chuckled. "You finally writing that memoir?" "Just one chapter," I said. "The one where she called me a burden." He didn't ask who I meant. I spent that afternoon at my desk, real wood, scratched at the edges, and wrote a letter. Not to Mark. Not even to Danielle. To myself. I wrote everything I'd swallowed, the way they spoke over me, the things they moved without asking, the nights I listened to them complain about how I hovered, even when I stayed silent behind a closed door. I wrote it all, not for confrontation, but confirmation. Proof that it happened. Proof that I saw it. When I finished, I folded the letter and placed it in the same drawer where I kept my spare house key and the last scarf Paul ever wore. That evening, the phone rang. It was Mark. "Hey," he said. His voice was careful, like someone walking through a room filled with glass. "I just wanted to check if you're okay." "I'm fine," I said. "Better than." There was a pause. I guess I didn't realize it meant that much. The house, I mean. "It wasn't the house," I said. "It was the way no one thought to ask if I still needed it." He didn't answer. I didn't fill the silence for him. "You'll be okay?" I added. I was never the one in the way. I hung up gently. That was the night I realized something. I hadn't left because they pushed me. I left because I finally stopped holding the door open for people who never planned to sit down and listen. A week after I moved in, I bought a used table from a woman named Martha. She lived 3 blocks down, in a building with cracked tiles and lavender growing wild near the steps. The table was oak, small but sturdy, with one leg that wobbled unless you placed a folded napkin underneath. She sold it for $15 and a slice of lemon cake I offered as thanks. "It was my mother's," she said, "but my daughter doesn't want it." I nodded. They rarely do. We sat on her porch afterward, sipping tea that tasted faintly of cinnamon and regret. She told me her daughter had asked her to stop coming by unannounced, said she needed emotional boundaries. Martha said it kindly, but the words stuck in her throat like a bone. I told her I understood. And I did. That night, I sat at my new table with my old photograph and made another list. Not of complaints. I'd done that already. This time I wrote names. Women I used to know. From church, from book clubs, from back when people still mailed holiday cards. Gloria, whose son put her in a trailer out past the river and stopped returning her calls. Maggie, who raised 4 boys and now lived in a shared room with a stranger who stole her socks. Beatrice, who once told me she felt like a ghost in her own home after her daughter-in-law moved in and took over the kitchen. They were all like me, once needed, then tolerated, then erased. I couldn't fix their pain, not all of it, but maybe I could do something small, something real. I called Jessica again. "I want to use part of the sale," I said, "to start something." She hesitated. "What kind of something?" "A place for women like me, like us. Not a care home, a living home. A place where no one has to explain why they're still breathing." Jessica didn't laugh. She didn't even pause. "I know a property," she said. "It needs work, but it has potential." So we drove out to the edge of town, a single-story house with peeling paint and a porch that sagged like tired shoulders. But the windows were generous, and the backyard caught light like it was thirsty for it. I walked through the rooms, quiet, empty, full of memory waiting to happen. "This'll do," I said. Jessica smiled. "You want to name it?" I looked out the back window, where weeds had overtaken the flower beds and a lone garden chair sat tilted in the grass. "Yes," I said. "I'll call it Lighthouse." "Like the one at sea?" she asked. "No," I said. "Like something small that stays warm." She nodded. I signed the papers that afternoon, and for the first time since Paul died, I felt like I was building again. Not out of grief, not out of need, but out of strength. It wasn't about proving anything to Mark or Danielle anymore. It was about making something that said, clearly and quietly, I was here. I still am. The house needed work. A lot of it. The roof had a soft spot near the kitchen. The plumbing whined when you turned the tap too fast, and the paint on the walls peeled off in thin, sad strips. But the bones were good. I could feel it in the way the floorboards creaked like old knees. Tired, but still willing to carry you. I hired a man named Dennis, mid-50s, hands like baseball mitts, polite in that quiet, apologetic way. "You sure you want to fix this place up?" he asked. "Most folks your age are downsizing." "I'm not most folks," I said. He laughed, then nodded. "Fair enough." We started with the essentials: plumbing, wiring, the roof. I came every day with sandwiches and a thermos of sweet tea. I sat on an overturned bucket in the corner while Dennis and his nephew pulled up tile and measured beams. I didn't get in the way. I just stayed present. That's something people forget old women can do. Be present without needing to be needed. When the structural work was done, I painted. Not all of it, but enough. I chose soft greens and warm browns, colours that don't demand attention but give it, the kind you don't notice until they're gone. The first room I finished was the front sitting room. I put 2 chairs by the window and a shelf between them, the kind of place where someone could knit or cry or do nothing at all and not feel wasteful. Jessica came by one afternoon to check on progress. She brought muffins and 2 reusable grocery bags filled with second-hand books. "I told my mum what you're doing," she said. She cried, then gave me her old kettle. I held it like an heirloom. Thank her for me. Next came the bedrooms. I didn't want many, just enough. 4 rooms, each with a bed, a chair, and a small table. No televisions, no clocks with ticking hands. Just peace. I reached out to a few women I knew, one from church, one from a library I used to volunteer at, and one I met on the bus years ago who had been caring for her sister until she passed. I didn't make announcements, no flyers, just phone calls. Each conversation went the same. "I heard you have space," they'd say, and I'd answer, "I do, and no one here has to earn their place." The first to move in was Helen, tall, wiry, sharp-tongued. She walked with a cane and a kind of pride that dared you to feel sorry for her. "I'm not here to be pitied," she said on the first day. "You won't be," I told her. "We don't do pity here, just quiet." Then came Ruth, who had once been a nurse and still folded towels with hospital precision. She cried the first night, sitting on the edge of her bed, running her fingers along the quilt I'd laid out. "I didn't think anyone remembered I liked blue," she said. I told her, "We remember things here, even the ones you forgot to tell us." The third was Alma, soft-voiced, always humming hymns under her breath. She brought a single suitcase and a potted violet. When I asked what she needed, she said, "Just not to be asked for anything." I understood. By the end of the first month, the house was full. Not crowded, just full. Of breath, of small rituals, of second chances. We took turns cooking. We shared stories over weak coffee and burnt toast. We argued sometimes, mostly about where to put the knitting basket or which herbal tea didn't taste like dirt. But no one raised their voice, not once. The mailbox filled with things addressed to Lighthouse. Utility bills, yes, but also letters from women I didn't know. "My daughter said I was in the way," one read. "Do you have room?" Some nights I stayed up late, sitting on the porch with a blanket over my knees, watching the street lamp flicker. I thought about Mark, about Danielle, about the station, the cake, the way they didn't even slow down. And I thought about this place, this old house that used to moan when it rained and now sighed in contentment. It wasn't revenge I had built. It was memory with walls. And that felt stronger than anything they'd ever called love. Word spreads differently among women of a certain age. We don't post, we don't tweet. We remember. We whisper between bites of pound cake at church. We mention things when someone's folding their coat after a funeral. We tuck names into birthday cards, just in case. By the start of spring, the fourth room had a new occupant. Her name was Dottie. She arrived with a cab receipt, a torn suitcase, and a quiet that felt more like exhaustion than shyness. I met her at the door with tea already steeping and a fresh towel in hand. She didn't ask for help, but she took the cup when I offered it, both hands wrapped tight around the ceramic like it might disappear if she let go. In the beginning, she said little, watched a lot, ate without speaking, and washed her own dishes before anyone could offer. But her eyes followed the rest of us. Helen's morning porch stretch, Ruth folding napkins with corners sharp as pressed uniforms, Alma humming while she dusted the bookshelf. Then one afternoon, as I watered the mint on the back steps, Dottie came beside me and said, "My daughter told me I was difficult." I didn't look up, just kept watering. She said she couldn't take care of me and her kids at the same time, that I was a third child. Now I looked at her. "You are not a child," I said, "and you don't need to be taken care of. You just need not to be discarded." She nodded once and went back inside. The next morning, she set the table before anyone else was up. From then on, she was ours. It was a strange kind of home, not built on blood, not on obligation, just quiet understanding and the mutual recognition of pain. We didn't ask for backstories. We didn't offer advice unless it was requested. And we never, not once, asked someone to earn their bed. We existed together, with dignity. Once a week, I took the old bus line into the city. I'd walk past the station, the one where I stood with that cake in my hands, and I'd sit on the bench for a moment. Not long, just enough. I never waited for anyone. I just let the silence settle around me, the way it had that day, and I let it teach me again what it had tried to show me once already, that disappointment doesn't break you. It reveals you. It tells you who you are without them. One Thursday afternoon, as we were preparing dinner, chicken stew and buttered toast, the front door buzzed. We didn't usually get visitors. Helen peeked out the front window and said, "There's a man out there. Looks like he got lost and forgot to shave." I went to the door. It was Mark. He looked older. Not by time, but by something heavier. Regret, maybe. Or reality. "Hi, Mum," he said. I didn't invite him in. He stood on the porch with hands buried deep in his jacket pockets. "I didn't come to fight," he said. I didn't know where else to go." Behind me, I could hear Alma softly setting the table, Ruth calling out that the toast was starting to smoke. "You look well," he said. I am. He paused. I didn't think you'd leave. I thought you'd always stay. That was the problem. He nodded, the kind of nod that comes when a truth finally lands and doesn't bounce off. I was wrong, he said. You were quiet, I replied, while she said the words, and quiet is louder than you think. He didn't argue. Do you live here? He asked finally. I looked back over my shoulder, at the chipped paint, the warm lights, the smell of something burning faintly and no one caring. Yes, I said, and no one here forgets to stop the car. He swallowed hard, looked down at his shoes, then back at me. Do you have room? I didn't answer right away. I stepped outside, closed the door gently behind me, and looked him in the eye. For you, I said softly. Not yet. Then I walked past him, down the steps, and into the twilight. Behind me, the door stayed closed, and for the first time I didn't feel like I was shutting him out. I felt like I was letting myself in. The next day, he called. Twice. I didn't answer the first time. I was trimming dead leaves from the mint plant on the kitchen windowsill. Alma was humming a tune I didn't recognize, and Ruth was organizing the spice rack alphabetically again. There was peace in the air, the kind that fills a place when everyone inside understands they don't owe each other explanations, just space. The second time, I let it ring 3 times before picking up. Mom, he said. His voice sounded like someone trying to walk on gravel without making a sound. I'm listening, I said. I didn't come yesterday to make you feel bad. I didn't feel bad, I said. I felt seen. He went quiet for a moment. I guess I didn't realize how far it had gone. Danielle, she said some things, but I should have said something too. Yes, I said. You should have. I didn't say it to punish him. I said it because it was true. And truth, at my age, is all I have left to trade in. I just thought we were doing the right thing, giving you space, letting you have your routine. Danielle said. I cut him off gently. You let someone make a stranger out of me in my own family. And you let it go on for years. That wasn't giving me space. That was leaving me behind. He didn't argue. There was no defense anymore, just the kind of silence that only follows understanding. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. I don't expect you to ask, I replied. There was another pause, this one softer. I heard about the place, the women you've brought in, the house. It's beautiful, Mom. You made something real. I made something necessary. He exhaled into the phone. Can I help? Not with guilt, I said. We don't need guilt here. We need hands, time, listening, not apologies written in errands. I can do that, he said quickly, too quickly. Then start by doing it somewhere else, I told him. You don't come here until you stop needing it to be about you. He didn't call back for 3 days, and when he didn't speak about himself. He asked how Dottie was settling in, if the kitchen still needed a new drawer handle, if we had a tea kettle that didn't whistle so loudly. That was a start. Meanwhile, Lighthouse lived. On Saturdays, we did puzzles. On Sundays, Helen led us in stretching exercises in the living room. Ruth found an old radio at a thrift shop, and we danced, socks slipping on polished floors, while Alma clapped to the beat. No one asked if it was silly. We were old. We'd already done serious. This was our reward for surviving it. We hung a corkboard in the hallway where we pinned small notes, some funny, some sharp, some heartbreaking. Alma says rosemary helps memory. Ruth forgot to water it. We call that irony. Helen says she doesn't miss her son. She just misses being missed. Dottie found a bird nest in the gutter. She named the mama bird June. June visits every morning. I added mine one evening after Mark's last call. It took me 40 years to be heard. It only took 4 women to keep listening. Some nights I sat on the porch and wondered about Danielle. If she noticed the house felt colder without someone sweeping the hallway or warming the kitchen. If she still replaced truth with aesthetics, still curated life like a magazine layout. I didn't feel bitter. I just hoped one day she'd grow tired of being the most important voice in every room. Mark called again the next week, said he was volunteering at a shelter twice a month, said it reminded him of me. I don't want to be reminded of me, I told him. I want you to remember yourself. I'm trying, he said. Good, I answered. Try longer. Then I set the phone down, poured a cup of chamomile, and joined the others in the sitting room. Alma had found an old deck of cards, and Helen was insisting we all learn bridge, even if she had to teach it by force. The kettle whistled, the chairs creaked, and somewhere outside, June the bird called out, her voice thin but steady in the evening air. We were not saving the world, but we were rebuilding it, 4 women at a time. It started with a letter, not an email, not a voicemail. A real letter, delivered by hand. Folded neatly into thirds, tucked in a plain white envelope with my name written in blocky, unsure handwriting. Nora. No mom, no mother, just Nora. Helen handed it to me as I came in from the garden, dirt still under my nails, my apron smudged with the morning's failed attempt at transplanting basil. Some kid dropped this off, she said, squinting at the envelope. Didn't say a word, just handed it over like it was a summons. I wiped my hands on the apron, opened the envelope carefully. Inside, 1 page, lined paper, blue pen, a little smudge at the top where someone had started, then stopped. I don't expect you to respond, it began. I just need to write this. It was from Mark. He wrote about the silence in the house after I left, how the kitchen echoed now, how their son, my grandson, had asked where Grandma went, and Mark hadn't known what to say. He wrote about Danielle's distance, how she didn't laugh the same way anymore, how he'd caught her scrolling through old photos one night, pausing on the ones where I stood in the background, apron on, smiling like I didn't know I wasn't really in the frame. He wrote, I thought you would always be there. I didn't realize that assumption was its own kind of cruelty. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Not once. That was the only reason I kept reading. At the end, he wrote, You were never a burden. You were the foundation. I just never learned the difference. I folded the letter slowly, not because I needed time to process it, but because it deserved to be held with care. That was something we hadn't done with each other in a long time. I didn't write back. Not yet. That night, I shared the story over dinner. The letter, the delivery, the words that had come too late, but still came. He's learning, Alma said softly. Most men don't. Ruth nodded. Too bad learning doesn't come with back pay. Helen rolled her eyes. If men paid us back for what we gave, the national debt would collapse. We laughed, long and loud. And somewhere under that laugh, something shifted. Not forgiveness, but room. A week later, Mark showed up again. No warning. Just his shadow through the frosted glass, his knock. Soft, hesitant. I opened the door. He didn't speak right away, just held up a box. Tools, he said. I thought maybe the porch could use some sanding. I remember Dad used to... Come in, I said, cutting him off before the nostalgia turned into apology. He didn't move. Are you sure? No, I said, but come in anyway. He spent the afternoon working in silence. I watched from the kitchen window as he pulled nails, patched boards, sanded edges. No dramatics, no sighing, just work. At one point, Helen walked past the window, peered out at him and muttered, "Well, well, look who grew thumbs." That made me laugh again. A real one. When he finished, he washed his hands in the laundry sink, then stood in the hallway like a guest at a funeral. "I don't want anything," he said. "I just wanted to help, like you always did. I see it now." I nodded. "Then maybe next time, bring pie." He grinned. "Your lemon cake ruined me for all others." "Good," I said. "Let it haunt you." He laughed. For the first time in years, it sounded familiar. He didn't stay for dinner. I didn't offer. Not because I wasn't ready, but because I wanted him to earn the invitation next time by showing up with his hands full, not just his heart. After he left, I walked out to the porch, ran my palm along the railing he'd repaired. The wood felt smoother now, like it remembered what it was built for. So did I. I didn't know what would come next, whether he'd keep showing up or slip back into old patterns. But I knew this. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't standing at stations or doorways hoping to be chosen. Now I lived in a house where the door opened for those who carried something other than expectation. And that made all the difference. 2 weeks passed. No letters, no visits. Just the steady rhythm of our quiet house. Morning tea, shared chores, stories told over dishes, and walks to the market. The days rolled in gentle, familiar patterns. We didn't speak about Mark much. We didn't need to. The house had its own way of deciding when the past was welcome. Then, on a soft Tuesday afternoon, the buzzer rang again. Alma answered it, squinting at the monitor. "It's a girl," she called. "A young one, holding something in foil." I came to the door. She looked about 10. Brown hair pulled back in a lopsided ponytail, thin elbows sticking out of a yellow cardigan that wasn't hers. "Hi," she said. "Are you Nora?" "Yes." She held out the foil package. "My dad said to give you this. He said it's an apology cake, but I helped. So it might be a little weird." I took it carefully. "What's your name?" I asked. "Sophie." I looked into her face. I'd seen her only in photos. School pictures on the fridge, Christmas cards sent without warning. She looked like him. But the eyes, those were mine. "Do you want to come in?" I asked. She hesitated, then stepped forward, peeking around me like the house might bite. We sat in the front room. She took the middle cushion of the couch like it was the only safe spot. I unwrapped the foil. It was a cake, all right. Lopsided, unevenly frosted, one side sunk in the middle. But it smelled right. Lemon, butter, sugar. I cut 2 slices. We ate in silence. Then she said, "Dad cries now sometimes, when he doesn't think I see." I looked at her. She wasn't trying to manipulate. She wasn't even trying to comfort. She was just stating a fact, the way children do when truth hasn't been taught to hide yet. "He said you built this place for ladies who got left behind." "Something like that," I said. She nodded. "Can I come help sometime?" I didn't answer right away. I watched the way she picked crumbs from her plate, her fingers precise and gentle. The kind of gesture you don't learn from neglect. "Do you want to help?" I asked. "Or do you just want to see if I'll come back?" She blinked. "I don't want you to come back if they're mean," she said finally. "But I want to know you." That was the moment. The one no one prepares you for. Not the betrayal. Not the grief. The moment someone small and new sees you, really sees you, not as the wreckage of family politics, but as a whole person. "You can visit," I said, "but we don't call it helping. We call it being here." "Okay," she said, like it was the simplest promise in the world. She stayed for an hour. Dottie taught her how to clip mint without bruising the leaves. Helen told her a wildly inappropriate story about her first boyfriend, and Ruth made her a sandwich she didn't ask for. Before she left, she hugged me, one arm, sideways, quick. But it was real. That night, the house was quieter than usual, not empty, just full of thought. Helen said, "Looks like we've got a new recruit." Ruth said, "Make her earn it. Give her the basement to sweep." Alma just smiled and handed me the leftover cake, wrapped in new foil. "She'll be back?" she said. "She's already got your eyes." I placed the cake in the fridge and sat for a long time in the dark kitchen. Not sad, not hopeful, just still. For years, I had waited for recognition from my son, his wife, the people who once called me a blessing, then a burden. And it came not from them, but from a child who didn't know the whole story, just that I had one. Sometimes, that's all it takes. Someone new, someone kind, someone who sees the woman, not the wound. Spring turned to summer in quiet degrees. Longer days, warmer nights, the scent of jasmine weaving through the open windows of Lighthouse like a memory you couldn't quite name. The garden filled in, wild and slightly uneven, just the way we liked it. Ruth's tomatoes leaned too far to the left. Alma's basil grew like it had something to prove. Helen planted something she refused to identify, only saying, "If it blooms, I win." We all let her win. Sophie came every Saturday. She brought coloured pencils, helped label herb jars, and once organised the spice rack in a way that made Ruth secretly redo it after she left. But no one said a word. She called everyone by their first names, but called me Grandma without being asked. The first time she did it, the others didn't even flinch, as if we'd all been waiting. Mark called once every other week, sometimes just to ask what kind of paint we'd used in the guest room, sometimes to tell me a story from work, sometimes just to say goodnight. He never asked me to come back. That's how I knew he was starting to change. Danielle didn't call. I didn't expect her to. Some things don't heal. They just stop bleeding. I didn't plan to do anything with the money left from the house, not right away. But one morning, I stood in front of the empty lot next to ours and thought, what if there were more? More rooms, more chairs at the porch table, more beds that didn't have to be earned with obedience. By the end of the month, we bought the lot. I say we, because even though it was my money, every decision I made now included the people who sat around me each evening drinking tea and deciding what counted as too much garlic. We named the expansion Quiet Wing. Because here, silence wasn't emptiness, it was rest. One Thursday, while painting the window frames a soft blue, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see Sophie, holding out a piece of paper, folded, messy, smudged with something suspiciously sticky. "I wrote about this place," she said. I unfolded it. Crayon, big letters, a drawing of the house, 5 women on the porch, a girl with a watering can, and above it, in crooked handwriting, "Here, no one yells." I smiled. "Can I keep this?" "No," she said. "It goes on the wall, so people know." So we framed it, right above the doorway, first thing you see when you enter. That night, as the sun stretched itself lazy across the porch, we all sat with our cups. Chamomile, peppermint, black with a splash of cream. Helen talked about her high school sweetheart. Ruth rolled her eyes and corrected her timeline. Alma laughed so hard she spilled tea on her skirt. Sophie leaned her head on my shoulder. "Do you miss him?" she whispered. I didn't have to ask who. "I miss who I thought he was," I said. "But I'm glad he's learning who he can still be." She nodded. "Dad's better now." I kissed her temple. "So are we." The porch light flicked on automatically as the last of the sun dipped behind the fence. No one stood up first. No one cleared the cups or started washing or tidying or pretending to be useful. We just sat, whole, seen, enough. The letter came on a Monday morning, not from Mark, not from Danielle, from Sophie. Folded in half, tucked into a blue envelope decorated with stars drawn in pen. Inside was a card, the kind with glitter that never really dries, and a short note in her wide, careful script. Dear Grandma Nora, Dad said sometimes saying sorry too late still counts, as long as you mean it. He said I got my kindness from you. I think that's the best thing I ever got. Love, Sophie. I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that in years past. What I felt was quieter, heavier, like a stone in the hand that you don't throw, just keep for balance. That evening, I called Mark. Tell her I got the letter, I said. Tell her she's right. There was a pause. Then he asked, would it be all right if we came by? Just for tea, no expectations. I looked around. Helen was on the porch, reading a paperback novel with the spine cracked and pages folded like wings. Ruth was humming to herself, flipping through an old cookbook, pretending she wasn't choosing tomorrow's dinner. Alma was napping in her chair, one hand still curled around a half-finished scarf. Dottie was rearranging the tea bags again, her version of prayer. We didn't need more people. But maybe, just maybe, we had space for truth. Yes, I said. But don't be late. Tea waits for no one here. The next afternoon they came, Sophie in her yellow cardigan again, Mark in the same jacket from his last visit, now a little more worn, a little more human. They brought a pie, store-bought, peach, labelled gluten-free even though none of us cared. But Sophie carried it like it was treasure, and we received it like it was peace. We sat in the front room. Everyone took their place. Helen raised an eyebrow at the pie, but cut it anyway. Ruth made real tea, not the decaf nonsense Danielle used to insist on. Alma offered Sophie her own seat, and Dottie whispered, that's a promotion. We didn't talk about the station, or the cake, or the years I spent waiting for the sound of keys at the door that never turned. We didn't need to. That was the power of the space we had built. A place where you could be more than the worst thing you'd done, as long as you carried it in your own hands, not someone else's. When they left, Sophie hugged each of us. She whispered, thank you for keeping my grandma. Like I was a story someone else almost erased. And maybe I was, but not anymore. That night, I lit a candle on the porch. Not for them. For me. For the woman who once stood at a train station holding a cake, waiting to be noticed. For the one who waited quietly in guest rooms and learned to disappear in her own home. For the one who finally remembered her own name was on the deed. And for the ones like me. The ones who give and give until there's nothing left but quiet. And then find, in that silence, something louder than anyone ever expected. Justice doesn't always come with sirens or judges. Sometimes she wears a soft shawl, grows mint on the balcony, and doesn't answer the phone. Sometimes justice is a house full of women who laugh without permission and pour tea like they own the world. Because they do. If you've ever stood quietly at the edge of a room you paid for, if you've ever been spoken over, erased, or told your love was too much, if you've ever made dinner and been called a burden in the same breath, then let me say this. You are not too late. You are not too old. And you are not alone. Subscribe to Grandma's Untold Stories. Because here, we don't scream. We remember. We rebuild. And we remind the world, one story at a time, that silence isn't weakness. It's a woman sharpening her blade.